Welcome to a new week of Spicer and Company. I'm Sean Spicer.
And I'm Lindsay Keith. Well, over the weekend, the Black Lives Matter protests continued across the country with calls to defund the police only escalating. And the death of another black man who was shot by police in Atlanta added to that unrest. Rashard Brooks was killed during a confrontation with police in a Wendy's parking lot after he resisted arrest and took an officer's taser. That Wendy's was later burned down by protesters.
You know, another poll came out just recently from Gallup, and it shows something that is really concerning. Pride in America is now at a record low, and the nationwide unrest is cited as one of the main reasons. So check this out. Just 42% of Americans say that they are extremely proud to be an American. That's down 15% from 10 years ago. But how much of this is attributed to the way the media is covering everything that's happening? If you watch and you listen to the mainstream media, something that I have tended to avoid you do, and you believe their narrative, then you'll get the sense that the object of the violence that accompanies some of these protests, or a challenge in the viewpoint from the left, then you are a bad guy, or even worse, a racist. If you voice an opinion that's different than the mob and their way of thinking, you are branded and shamed for doing so. So what good is free speech if you can't feel free to express yourself? It used to be that the part of defending free speech was defending the right of people who didn't agree with you, but not anymore. Our first guest says that the left have become a mob, taking out anyone who does not bow immediately when they want. He is the host of the Rubin Report and the author of the new book, Don't Burn This Book. Back is joining us, Dave Rubin. Dave, welcome back.
Good to be with you guys. Hey, before we do anything else, for now on, when I come on your show, can you put extremely proud to be an American on my chyron right underneath me? That'll be just fine. I know that'll get me in a lot of trouble, but I'm down with it.
We'll talk to the producers. I got that coming. So we got that one covered. I don't know, it's probably more than a few years ago now. There was this skit on Seinfeld where they're walking in this AIDS walk and Kramer refuses to wear the ribbon and they keep going, will you wear the ribbon? And it was funny. It was funny because it was so over the top that even though he was walking and supporting this, he said, you know, I'm walking, so I'm with you. And they said, but you're not wearing the ribbon, therefore you're a bad person. It's almost like that is not funny anymore. That's where we are in reality now.
Life is imitating art, Sean. Yeah, it's a hilarious bit. Of course, it's season 7, Seinfeld. So it's the last season of Seinfeld, and they really were. It was just the perfect comedy at the time. But yeah, the idea there is that he's there. Kramer is there to support the AIDS march, and he just doesn't want to wear a ribbon. He just doesn't like wearing a ribbon. What happens to him? Well, the mob ends up basically beating the crap out of him. That's how the episode ends. And in many ways, that is what has happened here with the modern left. If you support virtually everything that they support, but you don't want to wear a ribbon, or in this case, you don't want to post a blackout image on Instagram, or you maybe have one position that's, say, slightly off from what they want. So let's say, you know, you don't want 6-month abortions, which most sane people, certainly 10 years ago, did not want. Just whatever one position might be, they view that as the opportunity to have the mob take you out. So as we've talked about before, what's happening right now is, in effect, the left, as it becomes hysterical and really puritanical and authoritarian in nature, it's growing a very, what I would say is rich, intellectually diverse right. And that's actually quite exciting if you care about the good things about America.
You know, the poll that I just cited, I want to break this down to you from a partisan standpoint, because it's troubling to me that what's going on now, not the part about George Floyd, but the response, which is we in America have the ability to petition our government, to have our voices heard. And you look at how proud people are right now, 67% of Republicans, 41% of independents, only 24% of Democrats. I think, frankly, what I've seen over the past few weeks is that people have been able to speak out about an injustice that they cared about, which is what makes America great and what makes other countries so bad, is that you don't have the ability to do this. And so to see pride go down the toilet concerns me. I'm concerned, Dave, that the media is complicit in this. They are making people less proud to be an American.
Oh, well, it's the media, but, you know, we should first, which I'm happy to talk about, but we should first look at specifically what's coming out of the Democratic Party, because these numbers are not just coming out of nowhere. I mean, think about the Democratic primary process. Think about the amount of times that they said America is racist, that half the country is bigots, and we're homophobes, and all of these things. that everyone knows isn't true, because guess what? Nobody leaves the United States. We are still the jealousy of the world. There are still millions of people worldwide who want to come here. Nobody leaves America for these reasons, of course. And it doesn't mean we're perfect. But when the leaders of the party are saying, well, America is systemically racist, well, then no wonder only, what was it, 24% of Democrats are saying they're proud to be Americans? I mean, that's deeply depressing. But your point about the media, of course, is right. The media, the mainstream media especially, has lied and instigated many of these riots. You know, you've got Ali Velshi on MSNBC literally standing in front of a building that's exploding, talking about the peaceful protests. There's a million examples of this. And it's like, whoa, they're actually trying to tell us not to see the things that we can see right in front of our eyes. You know, the silver lining, of course, Sean, is that things like Newsmax and independent shows like mine and all sorts of things that are bubbling up on the digital side of things, well, we're taking their viewers. So at some point, I think, you know, we're just going to have to go, we're going to have to just cut it. We're just going to have to go, you know what, it's time that it's not even worth talking about CNN anymore. I know it's hard not to do because it seems like they have this huge influence, but outside of the media bubble, it's hard to tell what they really influence, actually.
Dave, we're running out of time, but real quick, one of the things that I touched on in the beginning is that when I grew up, when I joined the military, we always talked about the beauty of the First Amendment was that you defend the ability of people to say things that you don't like. We've lost that. I mean, there is no more, it's not the ability to say it anymore. You get shouted down. So it's not even a question of the right, it's the ability now.
Of course, 1972, the famous ACLU defense of neo-Nazis to march in Skokie, Illinois, which had the largest percentage of Holocaust survivors in the United States. Nobody is for that. No sane, rational person is for that sort of bigotry. But the idea that they can express their political opinions as long as it remains peaceful, that is something that we have to defend in America and cherish in America. And right now, the ACLU, you know, 40 years later, is a far cry from what it was back in 72.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm actually really concerned that what's the point of having these rights if we don't feel safe to express them? And I also think part of the issue is that by exchanging ideas, we learn. Right? And sometimes that's the beauty of this is I express something, you express something else, and I say, that's interesting. It's a different point of view. Explain your point. If I'm too fearful to express my own point, then we actually stop learning from each other. And that's, I think, the biggest concern that I have right now. But as always, I really appreciate your insight into this. It's such a concerning subject right now.
Good to be with you, as always.
Thanks, man. You'll always be a proud American to me. All right. Well, our next guest spent the weekend at this Chaz Autonomous Zone in Seattle. Here is a quick look at one of the scenes that he actually witnessed.
I love America, but does Black Lives Matter?
Absolutely. Then don't fly the flag.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
No, that's not fine. Just take that.
That's my flag.
Joining us now to fill us in on everything that he did see is senior writer for Town Hall, Julio Rosas. Julio, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Sean, thanks for having me.
All right, so I've seen a lot. I keep hearing on the media that these are very peaceful, that these guys with guns who are deciding who comes in and out are very, very peaceful people. Tell me what you saw.
So, yeah, I started my coverage there starting on Tuesday, and I left yesterday on Sunday. And from what I could tell, so the thing that's kind of hard for people to understand that aren't there is that it's a very fluid situation. It's constantly in flux. So I will say it has been peaceful for the most part, but if you just listen to the mainstream media, you'll get the impression that it's 100% peaceful all the time, which is not the case. As I've documented throughout my time there have been a lot of fights. There was a mob that accused a young man of stealing a phone, and they almost beat him up with a baseball bat, and it turned out that he actually didn't steal what he was accused of stealing. And this is all happening with essentially the permission of the Seattle city government, because they don't have any plans anytime soon on retaking this 6-block radius around the East Precinct. I can't say that the Seattle Police Department does have plans to take it back, but they obviously have to get permission from the city government, and the Democratic leadership is in no rush to get this area back under control.
How many people are armed there? Like, are guns prevalent?
Yes. So again, because of the situation being constantly in flux, there are people with guns at any given time, whether it's handguns or rifles. I saw a combination of both. But it's a loose coalition of people with the one common goal of defunding and dismantling the Seattle Police Department. So they are there on the barricades, keeping watch, keeping guard, making sure that the police don't come back or anybody that they suspect of being a white supremacist from entering the zone. Sometimes they're armed with just wooden poles or metal poles. I saw a combination of that. Or sometimes they're just not armed at all. Sometimes they just have a radio. It's just a very they might be there 1 hour, but then you come back another hour at a different part of the zone, and it's a completely different set of people.
So here's what I don't get. The media that generally doesn't think anyone should have a gun and talks about gun control, whatever, seems to not report on this piece of it. Normally, I would think that the media would be talking about how these are vigilantes with guns and doing all these bad things. And yet, I rarely hear a peep from the mainstream media about people taking up arms and taking over a city block. They make it seem like it's just a bunch of people waving flags and singing Kumbaya.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've said this before that if these were Trump supporters who took over 6 city blocks, there would be a lot more hostility from the mainstream media. There's absolutely a double standard there for sure. And again, yeah, because Washington is an open carry state, so that's why that's why they're able to go ahead and do that. I don't know what the Seattle city rules are when it comes to open carrying, but the state is. No, you're absolutely right, Sean. That there's a double standard there, and we kind of saw it with the Michigan protesters for the lockdowns and how they were vilified, even though even though no one was shot or they were called domestic terrorists. Whereas these people, sure, they're mostly peaceful, but they are armed. I mean, they are, and there have been acts of violence. Inside, in and around the zone.
When the Covington Catholic kids were protesting, they were all horrible little kids going up doing anything. Now these people with guns seem to be fine. It's amazing the double standard that seems to exist depending on who's protesting and what they're favored for. But I appreciate this. Thanks for going out there and sharing what's really happening on the ground so people can have some real insight that's not filtered by the mainstream media.
Yeah, no. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, coming up, we're not allowed to disagree with each other anymore without being labeled, right? Well, we're going to ask our company if civil discussions are a thing of the past. Plus, later, another clear example of media bias as one network praises crowds who gathered to protest the police, but questions gathering for a Trump rally and calling it a health risk. And the president and his challenger, Joe Biden, are moving further apart on law and order. So where does that leave voters in the middle? Dick Morris is going to weigh in.